Welcome back, Midnight Viewers, to Star Trek Fest. I'm Father Malone. With me, as always, is my co-host, HP. Hello, HP.
Hello, Father Malone. How are you this evening?
Resistance is futile,
Is this the
I'd
right
have to
podcast?
say. Yeah, I don't know. We're so jovial. Okay, we've reached the nadir, the zenith, as far as Star Trek movies go. Obviously, Star Trek II is everyone's favorite. It's the acknowledged best of the series, but if one is bumping up against it, it just might be this particular flick. We are, of course, talking about Star Trek First Contact.
In his nightmares, he can see them. In his mind, he can hear them.
Locutus.
In his soul, he can feel them.
I've just received a report from Deep Space 5. Long-range sensors have picked up...
Yes, I know. The Borg. Set a course for Earth. Maximum warp.
Now, in Earth's darkest hour, he must fight them again.
Captain, Earth. Life signs?
Population approximately 9 billion. All Borg.
How?
Time travel. They went back and assimilated Earth. Changed history. I must follow them back. Repair whatever damage they've done.
But this time, they must travel to the past
April 4th,
2063.
to save our future.
You're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
They invade our space, and we fall back. They assimilate entire worlds, and we fall back. Not again. The line must be drawn here.
It looks like the control deck's 26 up to 11.
Mr. Data and I are returning to the ship. Don't let them touch you!
Captain!
Data!
We must activate the auto-destruct sequence.
You want to destroy the ship and run away? You coward.
If you were any other man, I would kill you where you stand.
Let's rock and roll!
Destroy them. Watch your futures end.
We've lost shields and our weapons are gone.
Resistance is futile. Perhaps today is a good day to die.
John, look, blow up the damn ship!
No! We are not going to lose the Enterprise. Not to the Borg, not while I'm in command.
Star Trek First Contact.
Star Trek First Contact was directed by Jonathan Frakes, story by Rick Berman, Brennan Braga, and Ronald D. Moore, with a screenplay by Brennan Braga and Ronald D. Moore, starring Patrick Stewart, Jonathan Frakes, Brent Spiner, LeVar Burton, Michael Dorn, Cheryl McFadden, Gates McFadden, Marina Sirtis, Alfre Woodard, James Cromwell, and Alice Kriege, with Neil McDonough as Lieutenant Hawk.
I think you're forgetting someone very important here, Father Malone.
You mean Robert Picardo as the Doctor?
No, for folks
You
who might...
mean Adam Scott in his brief appearance on the bridge of the Defiant?
I acknowledge all of those choices, but you're still on the wrong path here. So maybe folks who are coming here who also listen to Father Malone and myself, the other podcast, one of the other podcasts we do, which is called Nightmares to Walters. I'm talking, of course, about Michael Horton. Michael Horton, who in this movie plays a security officer, was in a season 2 episode of Taxi called Wherefore Art Thou, Bobby. He was playing the young actor that becomes an off-Broadway sensation and basically steals Wheeler's thunder and makes him want to quit acting. He's in this. Michael Horton has a featured part, and we will see him again in Insurrection. So evidently Jonathan Frakes really liked this guy.
He's just a security officer on the Enterprise, right?
That's his character name in this. In Insurrection, we'll see he actually gets an official name.
So he survives the Borg incursion on the Enterprise E.
He does. He's like the Wedge Antilles of the Next Generation, if you will.
Almost like a Dwight Schultz. He's in this as well. As
I'm so happy to see him here.
Lieutenant Barclay. HB, what is the story of Star Trek First Contact?
So the story of First Contact is an interesting one. So folks who maybe know a little bit about The Next Generation or watched the show know that Captain Picard at one point was captured and turned into a Borg by the Borg Collective. In this movie, there's an attack on Earth by the Borg, and they end up going back in time and enslaving the entirety of humanity and ruining the actual first contact that signaled a new dawn for the human race. Warp drive was discovered. So Picard and the rest of the Enterprise crew have to go back in time following the Borg and undo everything they've done and make it so that humanity can have their first contact moment.
I don't really have much on the Star Trek First Contact behind the scenes like production leading up to, except one of the series' better directors finally gets his due, and they put him in the director's chair here, Mr. Jonathan Frakes. We always used to call him Commander Cheese back in the day, but William T. Riker is at the helm of the entirety of the project, and this is one of the best directed Star Trek episodes, or best directed Star Trek films I've ever seen.
Totally agree. And I thought about this, and I think part of the reason, not only is it visually one of the better Star Trek films, next gen or otherwise, but it's anyone who watches interviews or who's been nerding out about Next Generation, like we have, interviews of these guys, and you know that the whole cast, unlike the original series, this cast really cares for each other. And they were and still are a very tight-knit group. I think that informs his direction. He knows these actors very well, and he's able to get very good performances out of each and every one of them, particularly Patrick Stewart. This is a season high for him as far as the acting. Patrick Stewart, I don't think has ever been better in a Star Trek movie.
Oh, Star Trek movies, there are only a few.
4.
That is true. But then when you say you've never seen him better, my mind goes to how many seasons of Next Generation. And I think that there are 4 lights, and I think that might be a better performance than what he gives here. But that's television, and
movies.
We're doing theatrics here, yeah.
Correct.
So I concede.
My logic has defeated you, Father Malone.
Indeed it has. Okay, the Borg. I'm going to just put on my Doctor Who scarf for a moment and just say they're the Cybermen, okay? They're just a ripoff of the Cybermen. That's exactly the way the Cybermen operate. They grab human beings, they encase them in metal, they hook them up to a cybernetic system. They're all one collective. Resistance is futile. Okay, now having said that, I love the Borg because they're basically zombies or techno-zombies, and they love green, which is a favorite color of mine, and I like blinking lights, and that sort of 90s, late 80s, 90s aesthetic as far as junk futurism.
And for this movie also, Frakes really leans into the body horror very much for a movie that isn't like it's not an R-rated movie, but he comes right up to that barrier between R and PG-13. The Borg are really horrific, and the things, how they integrate you into the collective is they're amputating arms or putting weird claws and armatures and things. And we see quite a few Federation officers and members get taken by the Borg and turned into becoming part of the Borg Collective. And it's very horrifying in this movie, I have to say.
Yeah, the Borg are definitely a scary villain because when you go against them, your fallen become them, thus doubling their numbers.
They're implacable. They just don't seem to be able to be stopped. There are several times in the movie where they try to use phasers against them, and I think Worf each time says these are on a modulating frequency, but they will adapt. So you get maybe 10 or 12 shots, and then they're useless against these because they're so adaptable. That's their whole ethos.
I have some thoughts on the combat in this movie. It used to be one of my favorite parts of the movie. This time, I was a little more, not off-put, but not as engaged. Let's engage! HP, when did you first see the movie?
I saw the movie in the theater. I probably saw this movie I think I saw it twice in the theater and then many times on home video. I was already a big Next Generation fan, but I think that the trailers and the advance word on it was so positive. I got really excited. And then I saw it for that first time and I was hooked. I can't say it. This is definitely top 3 of all Star Trek movies, Next Generation or otherwise. But it's been a dogfight with Star Trek 2 for my favorite of all time. This might be the one that I rewatched the most, I will say.
Yeah, there's something so formative about Star Trek 2, seeing it as young as we did, and at that time, that was Star Trek. There was no other there was no other avenue to go down. It was Kirk and Spock and Bones, and that's where we were. And so now, I don't know, over the years, I first saw the movie, by the way, in Santa Monica at the Man's Criterion, which was my favorite other Santa Monica theater than my own. And I saw it there many times because I got to see movies for free because projectionists used to let each other into other theaters, other theater chains and stuff. So I saw this fucking movie a lot. Before we continue there, I just want to double back for Jonathan Frakes, talking about Jonathan Frakes, because you mentioned him getting performances out of the actors. And yeah, I agree with that. I think this is the best acted of any of the films. But I also think it was important for him to be the director of this film because the director, as the script is being shaped, is important as part of the person shaping that story, or if not the story, at least the character beats. So I'm sure he gave tons of notes saying we need more of this, we need more Geordi, we need more. Whereas with the previous cast, we had 2 movies directed by Nimoy and 1 directed by Shatner, and all they did was give themselves shit to do. Look, Nimoy leaned a little more democratically and spread the wealth around a little bit, but that was only for that movie. For part 4. He effectively gave one that was just him and Bones and McCoy, and then so did Shatner. Shatner would have jettisoned the entire cast if he could have.
And that's one of the things I love about this that we're touching on here is that in the past, there's always this kind of cloak and dagger aspect to who's getting the most lines. I'm going to take some of Chekhov's lines for my own, none of that appears to be going on here. There's no sense that any of these actors or their characters are getting shortchanged in any way. They all have a part to play, so to speak, in this movie. And I think I think Frakes is all too happy to give every character their moment and let them shine as those characters. I think that's one of the things I think is great about this. It really is an ensemble effort as opposed to Sulu has a few lines and whoever. It's a group effort.
As collaborative as any of the previous cast's movies had been, this one is the first time where it feels like where it doesn't feel like we have to figure out something for them to do. Everyone is part of a plot here. This is the most heavily plotted of any of the Star Trek movies to date, including Star Trek II. Star Trek II is a very simple story. They go here, they do this, they run into that, bang, that's over. This is 3 to 4 separate plots going on at once, where all of the characters are essential parts of putting this puzzle back together in order to get back to Earth in their own timeline.
Yeah, and not to mention, this movie almost unfolds in real time because once they reach Earth, they make it clear they only have 15 hours for Zephram Cochrane, the man who is credited with inventing warp drive. They got to get him up into space in 15 hours or humanity will miss that opportunity for first contact. So it's like you said, it's so tightly plotted and everybody has a piece of the puzzle, and it's also unfolding on 2 different planes. On Earth, you have Riker and Troy and Geordi, and they're working on getting Cochrane, his ship, repaired and taking off, while Picard and Worf and Data are on the Enterprise still trying to deal with the Borg, who have infiltrated the Enterprise, and they're steadily taking over deck by deck. They're assimilating the Enterprise in this larger scheme to take over the world. It's great. It's clockwork. It's fantastic.
And then the Earth story is pretty self-contained, but as well, even for having all of the characters featured down there. But up on the Enterprise, there are effectively 3 separate plots going on because we have Data and the Borg Queen, we have Picard and Lily, and dealing with Picard's plot line here. That's the most forward momentum for his story going on, is specifically with her. And then we've got Worf and Dr. Crusher and everyone just trying to fucking survive as the Borg onslaught continues. Meanwhile, the Borg are also plotting other fucking things that they're going to go have to deal with as well.
That's crazy. We probably should also mention that in this movie, Worf is actually a captain. We didn't mention that at the beginning. When the Borg are attacking Earth in the present day, let's call it, his ship is moments from getting destroyed, and he is beamed onto the Enterprise comes to save the day, and he's beamed onto the Enterprise, and at that point he becomes a de facto member of the crew, even though, to give him his due, he's Captain Worf. He's no longer Lieutenant Worf.
If you remember, Worf was aboard DS9 during this time period. He's on the Defiant, which is DS9's runabout. And I was shocked to see it there. It was a clever way to get him involved, but it's such a tiny little craft. I'm like, really? They sent that from Deep Space Nine to go fight the fucking Borg cube? What were we saying? I don't know. I just completely lost my train of thought.
We're talking about the different parallel plots that are all happening simultaneously, where you have Picard and Lily, Worf, and the rest of the crew. Data has his thing, but it sounds like a lot when you say it out loud that there's all these different plots going on, but you never feel the weight of that weighing on the movie. It all moves really quickly, and it all goes very smoothly. And it's not an especially long movie either. So there's a lot for them to wrap up, and it's economical in that sense.
This movie could have gone half an hour longer and I would have been okay with it. And I never say that about a film. Like, if they wanted to continue something with the Borg or something down there on Earth, everything was working in this movie for me. The more we're talking about it, the more I'm talking myself into that this is the best Star Trek film. Just because it not only balances everything with the cast, it not only embraces all of what Star Trek is meant to be, but it's a fucking great action movie. The script is clockwork tight, and it's, like you just said, like, there is so much, and they dive into so many different parts of Star Trek, because we get space battles, and we get them on the ground dealing with the moral conundrum of the Prime Directive, the ultimate Prime Directive here. This is where it all starts, for Christ's sake. Not to mention, we get a little bit of the holodeck, and the way it should be presented, and I don't know, there's intrigue, and there's zombies, and there's horror for the first time in any Star Trek ever.
And the look of it, when I was taking notes on this, I compare it to Star Wars, but not in the sense that it has the same feel. Like, Star Wars was a revelation in that everything felt very tactile, and it felt like a world that was real because everything had a grime and a grit to it, and the technology felt real and you could touch it. Here, it's not that same vibe. Everything is clean, and you have the LCARS panels and everything, but it all looks... It doesn't feel cheap like some of the other Star Trek movies tended to feel because of the budgetary constraints. Here, it felt like you see so much of the Enterprise because they're dashing between decks, going to all these different places. The holodeck, you already mentioned that. And it just feels solid and real. And then you have all the stuff on Earth with Zephram Cochrane's ship, which is a repurposed nuclear missile that he's using. And it's all the survivors of World War III there. It doesn't get completely gritty and grimy, but it feels real. And it's just the look of the film. I can't say enough good things about Jonathan Frakes and his vision for this. I think he was 100% the right person for the job.
Just a few years after this movie, it's when we started getting like Men in Black and films where it became this competition to see how far back they could do a zoom out in a shot. Men in Black ended up making it a fucking zoom out from the tiniest bit of Earth all the way to all of the galaxies, and then all of the galaxies turn out to be a marble. So you can't really top that one. But at the time, in taking a movie seriously, the opening shot of this movie, which is a close-up of Picard's eye, and then zooming out and out till we get to the enormity of the Borg, which we had always hinted at on the budget-conscious television series, syndicated television series, but it's one of my favorite shots in sci-fi, honestly.
That whole sequence I love because they do the fake out where you have him. It's a nightmare that he's having about the Borg, and then Picard wakes up and goes to the mirror, and then this weird metal thing hatches out of his face as he's looking in the mirror, and then you realize it's a nightmare within the nightmare. There's something about that puts you off kilter. You're not really sure quite what to expect, and it really gets you into the headspace of Picard too, and how tortured he is, having been a part of the Borg collective and everything he's dealing with. And that's obviously the main point of his plot line is he's dealing with the after effects of that, and how Lily makes a comparison to Moby Dick because he refuses to leave the Enterprise. Again, we potentially could have had another movie where the Enterprise is blown up at the end of it. I think we've had 3 or 4 of those now in the whole history of the series. But Moby Dick, it's obvious, but that really is the touch point for this character because he refuses to capitulate to the Borg because of what they took from him. They stole his humanity, and Picard, under no uncertain terms, wants to make them pay at the cost of maybe everything that he holds dear.
It's not often we get such a flawed character in one of our Star Trek movies, in that when you get a character and he's our lead and we've liked the character and we need to take them too far and give them a villainous trait, I don't feel like that's ever really successful. Unless they do something completely heinous, in which case we're not going to come back to them. I think this movie actually accomplished it because for a long time we're on his side. We know what he went through and we know what the Borg are capable of. But it's funny, I was with him as he was digging into a lieutenant's body in order to retrieve a piece of Borg technology, and he wasn't being emotional about it, and he wasn't being in any way reverential to that crew member at that moment, because this is a situation where they need to be moving without emotion at all if they're gonna even survive a Borg onslaught. But when he called Worf a coward, I was like, okay, he's gone too far. I can no longer side with Jean-Luc Picard if you're standing toe-to-toe with Worf and believing it. He wasn't just saying it to fuck with him. That's what Picard believes at that moment. You're a fucking coward.
Yeah. And that leads to that wonderful scene where Lily confronts him about this all-consuming hatred of the Borg and what it's going to lead him down this path. And I can't say enough good things, by the way, about Alfre Woodard in this. To me, she's a not-so-secret weapon because she effectively becomes the audience proxy because the Borg come to Earth, they start firing on Zephram Cochrane's position, effectively to prevent the first contact flight from happening. The crew beam down, they find Lily. She has radiation sickness from this missile being shot at. So they beam her to the Enterprise to be treated by Dr. Crusher. So that's how she ends up on the Enterprise. But she doesn't know what the hell's going on. And like any of us would react. How do you react when you're on this she doesn't even know it's a starship at that point. So she leaves as the Borg are taking over deck after deck. She effectively escapes from Dr. Crusher's gaze just for a moment. And she runs into Picard and she holds him at phaser point essentially and says, "Get me out of here. I don't know what's going on here, but get me out of here." And they start that way, but they eventually become much more understanding of each other. He shows her the ship. She understands what's happening. She becomes the audience proxy at that point, looking at Picard and what he's been driven to. And she's really the one who talks him out of it by using this Moby Dick analogy, which, by the way, I love that he quotes Melville back to her. And she goes, "Well, actually, I never read it," which I think is such a relatable thing. How many times have you been in a conversation where you fake knowing what the topic is just to keep the conversation going? That's exactly what she does. I don't know. Alfre Woodard is so grounded, and her interplay with Picard is a highlight. It's rare that you have the captain with a female counterpart when it doesn't become romantic. There's nothing romantic about their relationship. They're surviving on this ship, and they're helping each other through it. It's fantastic.
Alfre Woodard, if you haven't seen the movie Passion Fish, I want to encourage everyone to go check out John Sayles' Southern drama, but she's fucking fantastic in that. Alfre Woodard was friends with Jonathan Frakes, and he was only too eager to sign her up, and she was only too eager to join, and thank God she did. I love her. I think she's great. She lends a lot of that grit to the film that you're talking about. And that Star Wars comparison, I think, is completely apt because the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek has always been that the clean factor. Star Trek is supposed to be sleek and streamlined, whereas Star Wars wanted to be a used up world. Basically, Star Wars is filthy and Star Trek is clean. And while I don't think this movie ends up being filthy, it does feel real as compared to what we were seeing on the series. The series was very sterile. Yeah. Putting aside the fact that it was filmed on a soundstage and it was television production value, it still felt very hands-off. This one feels like this is a ship that these people work on, and they man that station where they actually have to turn dials and push buttons and stuff. But okay, I just wanted to double back for a second on the Picard's losing his shit. First of all, I agree that scene's magnificent. I do feel like the entire speech could have been summed up with the line, "You broke your little ships." I don't think she needed to say anything more than that to him to get him back to Earth as far as where he was. But it is saved at the end. Because I just thought actually bringing up Ahab, when this is clearly an Ahab situation, felt a little like text to subtext. But I do think it gets saved at the end because she says, I've never even read that book. Because who among us has?
Right. That's exactly it. But she's important because she's the only person that's willing to stand up to Picard. They all are used to taking orders from him. And as Lily says, they're used to his orders making sense. So she's the only one that can get through to him in that moment. And by God, she does, and you believe it.
It reminds me that Alfre Woodard ended up showing up in the MCU in Civil War. She's the one who turns Tony Stark's mind around about the Avengers' participation on the world stage, which reinforces what I'm saying about Picard and his sort of descent in this film. Because they made overtures toward where Tony Stark as a character in the comics went, where he became so disillusioned that he became a drunk for a long time. They give us one scene in Iron Man 2 where he's just drunk at a party, and that's supposed to approximate his entire battle with alcoholism. And I just thought that was so silly and short shrift. And it reminded me HP because HP and I went to high school together, and I'm pretty sure HP was pretty much a Marvel guy in high school, and I was a DC. And anytime you would bring up Iron Man, I would just say dismissively, "You mean Tony Stark, that drunk?"
You're right to a degree, but obviously you and I both, I think one of the things that bonded us, Father Malone, not to get too off topic, was two things. Number one, The Dark Knight Returns, and number two, and more importantly, Watchmen. The Watchmen series probably was the central thing that got us first talking together as friends, because we were both so in love with that comic book series. So yeah, I still think I am much more of a Marvel guy, not to get too wrapped up in this, but I have an appreciation for DC.
Oh yeah, I like I'm not brand specific when it comes to comics, sure, like I was when I was an idiot teenager. I want to talk about one thing that I don't like about this movie.
And I'm curious, I have one thing that I don't like. I want to see if it lines up with what
I actually have two. One is superficial and one is the thing that I think kept me from saying this is a better film than Star Trek 2. Okay. The more superficial one is that they continued to employ Michael Westmore as their makeup guy from the television series. Now, the Westmore family are Hollywood royalty, and they've been in every facet of the industry, and blah, blah, blah. Okay? I think his makeup work is bad in this film. Other than the Borg Queen. The Borg Queen is perfect. She looks great at all times. But all the other Borg feel slapdash, and when you get close up to them, it just looks like makeup to me.
And I don't disagree with you at all. I didn't process it as something I really didn't like. Because I'm along for the ride, and I guess I didn't nitpick to that degree, but you're absolutely right. When you get close, it just looks like a bunch of white makeup with black streakiness. And some of the cybernetics look a little dodgy. But I'm in the full willing suspension of disbelief mode here because the movie's so strong otherwise.
My least favorite part of the Borg in the movie is the one Borg who lifts up a gigantic attachment that they've placed over his regular hand, and out pops a tiny mechanical hand. Now, clearly somebody in the props department went, "Look, I made this little mechanical hand." And they went, "Oh, that's cool. Let's put it in the movie." And it just looks ridiculous. All I'm thinking is like, all that technology over a regular human hand to put that, like, Swiss Army knife fingers?
Yeah, it's like Edward Scissorhands in reverse, right? So I'll just give you a little, like, the snippers from a Swiss Army knife. That's exactly what I'll give you. Now you're saying that's the thing you hated the most about the movie? Or is that still
that's
the superficial
that's the superficial thing. The problem for me overall with the film is the bullshit, cliche nonsense that the Borg Queen is just out looking for a fucking boyfriend. Are you kidding me? What does she need with anyone ever, anywhere?
I agree with you there, but for different reasons. My least favorite part of this movie, and I've realized this having watched it recently, is the Borg Queen period. Because the thing of it is, Father Malone, you and I have talked about a number of these Star Trek movies right now. And Star Trek has a real predilection for the operatic, sort of noble villain who is prone to flowery speeches about their objectives and their aims and what they're going to do and what have it's like Bond villain bullshit. It doesn't work for me here. It's not the actress. I think Alice Krige is fine, and
I think you heard me talking about Alice Krige over on my other show, and you're qualifying right now.
I do remember you talking about it.
You and I are about to rumble, by the way.
I don't. To me, the Borg is so mindless and a single orientation of purpose. I just don't get that they have this queen at the center of it all, who's this model, who's yes and I don't know. It didn't work for me as well as it did when I first saw the movie. Let's say I've had more time to think about what the Borg really represent, and I just feel like they need to have something snazzy at the center of this villain to make it more interesting and cooler as an audience member, but I'm just not buying it. That's just my opinion. Sounds like you have a difference of opinion, though.
I could not disagree with you more. I think the Borg Queen is one of the best Star Trek villains ever. And I don't need her to be operatic. I like how quiet she is. I like how sexy she is. This character has humor and is willing to seduce you into doing what she wants, which is not contrary to what the Borg is. I think that's what it started out as. And I think having a voice of the collective is exactly what needs to happen at this stage of having dealt with the Borg as much as we did on the TV series. Just you get to a second Alien movie and you got to say, okay, where are all the eggs coming from? What are these, just this random race that are just out fucking colonizing? Like, or is there a central intelligence to it? And it had to start somewhere.
Yeah, but you don't have the alien queen didn't have a voice and wasn't sexy and didn't talk to Ripley about her plan and all of this. That's my problem with this. The alien queen is still an alien and is recognizable as such. You could. Are
you telling me the Borg haven't spoken before? Or you just wanted her to be like, I am the Borg. Hello, Data, I need those codes. Resistance is futile.
I wanted her to be a Dalek, basically, just clambering around. And no, I don't have a good answer for you because I haven't thought it through to that degree, Father Malone. I'm just saying it felt a little bit showy to have this very accomplished actress, by the way, in this part. I just thought it was, for me, it was a little bit too much. I get it. There have to be this war of wills between her and Data, and she's playing Data. She's trying to play Data on his desire to become human. That's all fine.
And it gives a face to fucking Picard's trauma. Like, he's there to deal with the fucking Borg. Here it is. And it's a seductive thing. It's not even if this were fucking aliens, if this were the fucking TV series even, it would be him running in and fucking blasting her. There would be no conversation. But this is Star Trek. I don't know. You're way off, man. In fact, Trish is going to agree with me on this one, buddy. Everyone's going to agree with me on this one. I would like everyone who listens to this show, please write in the show notes. Just click my link on my email and let me know who's right about the Borg Queen.
I'm going to quote my dad. Okay, my dad would always say, it's like a horse race. You know, people have to bet on different horses. It would be a boring life if everyone bet on the same nag. This is what I'm saying. I don't have to.
No, there's right and wrong, and you're wrong.
No, this is a difference of opinion, my friend. This is no different than all of the yellow lights we've discussed on Night Mr. Walters.
Don't plug your show. Don't plug your show here when you're being this incorrect.
I'm going to quote the juror in 12 Angry Men. I'm entitled to my opinion, Father Malone.
You are entitled to an informed opinion, which clearly you don't have. HP, are you familiar with the concept of the mirror universe?
I feel like we have this conversation. This is Groundhog Day. Yes, I'm familiar because you brought up the last Starship, I think. Wasn't that the thing you talked about?
No. Oh, no. I brought up the mirror universe because we talked about Seeker, who was the mirror version of V'ger.
Right.
And then I told you about the mirror version of George and Gracie, the whales.
I feel like you're making this up, Father Malone.
I'm not.
I need to...
I'm not. This one isn't even based. Most of those are like comics, like what if type comics thing. But this one is from a novella entitled The Worst of Both Worlds, which is a play on the finale of Star Trek, The Best of Both Worlds, Part 1 and 2, in which Picard and Noonien Singh, part of the ISS, the Terran Empire, or have to go face the Borg. In this version of the Borg, they all speak, and they're all very fast. It's like the difference between Dawn of the Dead zombies and Return of the Living Dead zombies, basically. And they somehow managed to defeat them. It was not very good. They didn't come up with some bizarre version of their name, like the Bjorn or something. So it's ultimately superfluous and who cares? But it does exist and it's out there. There is a mirror version. Oh, there's a king. That's the big innovation. There's a Borg king.
Ah, okay. But are the rest of the Borg all female in this case? Because they tend to be male.
They do tend to be male. Maybe that's just because they're grabbing males for their extra roundup.
They do.
I'm just speaking from extras.
Sure. No, but you do see a couple of the women get taken.
Oh yeah.
By the Borg.
Oh, 7 of 9, for Christ's sake, is one of the more famous Borg.
But I guess the whole point is that when you're absorbed, you become sexless effectively. Maybe
they're drones.
Are females. Yeah, they're drones. They're drones. Actually, speaking of which, can I talk about one of the things I like the best? One of the couple of scenes that I really love. The first one we already touched on, which is you talked about some of the dogfighting. There's a brief scene when the Enterprise saves the day and intercepts the Borg as it's attacking Earth. It's a very brief dogfight, but it's the kind of thing we don't see very often in Star Trek, where you have the Borg cube and there's dozens of Federation starships all circling it, shooting at it, trying in vain to destroy it. We very rarely see these kinds of large-scale bits of starship combat, and I love that. And I love Picard puts out an order to all the ships that are attacking it to fire on one little innocuous corner of the Borg ship. And they even say, there don't really seem to be any real vital systems there. And he says, trust me, I know. I've been a Borg. Do it. And they all do that, and it creates this chain reaction that actually does blow up the Borg ship. It's so brief, but there's so much about it I love. That's the first thing that I wanted to mention. You touched on it. The second thing I wanted to talk about is so after Picard takes out that piece of Borg tech, as you described from one of the officers from the holodeck, he plugs it into some doohickey and he realizes he's able to see the orders coming down from the Borg Queen, and he knows what they're trying to do. They're trying to use this radar dish as a beacon to bring the Borg from that time to Earth to aid in this conversion of Earth. So he and Worf and Hawk, Lieutenant Hawk, you talked about Neil McDonough.
Lieutenant Hawk.
They have to walk using mag boots, which we've talked about in the past with relation to Star Trek VI. They can't take a shuttle because the Enterprise has been taken over effectively. So they have to walk along the hull with these mag boots and get to this radar relay. And each of them has to release these mag locks. First of all, everything looks very tactile and it takes forever. But as they're doing this, the Borg...
Speaking of Alien, it's very much like arming Mother to explode.
Very good point. But as they're doing this, the Borg are in the center, plugging these bits of tech, these sort of beacon pieces to the overlaying over the radar dish. And it's making these humming sounds and it's a satisfying click when it goes in. I love that because it's tactile. But it's such a tense sequence because the Borg will ignore you unless they see that you're a threat. And once they realize that, hey, these humans are getting in the way or they're trying to stop us from what they're doing, one of them will stop and just walk towards one of them working on this. And it's just such a wonderfully kind of scary, intense situation because they're just in the vacuum of space with these spacesuits. They're vulnerable in the way that the Borg are not. And inexplicably, by the way, Worf has brought his whatever that bladed weapon that it's the Klingon weapon. I can't recall the name of it.
It's a Makleth.
Makleth. I don't know why he decided to take this ultra sharp thing and kind of tuck it into his spacesuit, which is vulnerable to sharp instruments, and he actually gets cut at one point. But the whole, putting that aside, the silliness of him having a sword effectively in the vacuum of space, I love the sequence because it's effectively taking place in sort of relative silence. There's not a lot of music happening in the background. It's just a vacuum of space. They're working on these mag locks. They're fending off the Borg. The effects are great. I think ILM did the effects for this movie, did they not? which is probably why it's maybe the best in the series, effects-wise.
I think it is the best effects-wise for the entire series. ILM were involved from beginning to end. I like this Enterprise, the Enterprise E. I like it more than the Enterprise D. Sorry, purists. I think the effects beginning to end are fucking great, including still stands up when we meet the Borg Queen and they lower her down into her body shell. That's fucking fantastic. I love the look of even that Proto-Enterprise, the Zephram Cochrane's warp ship. When the nacelles pop out there, that all looks fucking fantastic. But the scene you're talking about, the emitter array sequence, were there no portholes closer to the emitter array?
Maybe not. Maybe we're led to believe that the Borg are all over the ship. I would assume that they just couldn't get.
They control decks, blah blah to blah blah blah. Yeah. Okay. No, that's a quibble. But I want to address the Macleth actually, because for the first time ever while watching this movie, during the holodeck sequence, the Dixon Hill long goodbye type sequence, when he shoots them with a Thompson submachine gun, those Borg die, which means they are susceptible to projectile weapons and bladed weapons. What are they doing with phasers at all? Why isn't Worf toting his Batleth down the hallway? He could fuck all of them up. When he pulled out the Macleth, I went, oh my God, why isn't he doing this? He should have walked up with the Macleth and just started taking them out.
Yeah, he could just be decapitating them left and right. And just,
man.
Like Rambo or something, yeah.
Worf, who are the people you spar with on the Enterprise? Please call them and give them these weapons. Let's go take care of the Borg. How about let's lure all the Borg one by one onto the holodeck and just use the fucking Thompson submachine guns that, How about have a replicator make you a fucking machine gun? Or a blunderbuss? Or any projectile things? Spears, bows and arrows.
I guess, how do they adapt to them? That's true. I guess there wouldn't be much of a movie if they all just started replicating swords and just hacked away.
Here's a crazy idea. Vent plasma through the entire ship while you're all holed up in one particular compartment. Apparently that can do it.
That is how they kill the Borg Queen, right? They punch a hole in the plasma, whatever, coolant. It's plasma coolant or something, right? I'm getting all the terminology wrong here.
No, but this is completely off topic, everybody. But if you love Star Trek like HP and I love Star Trek, and you have a computer at home and you're looking for a screensaver, System 47. That's the name of it. Go there. It's a free fucking download, and it's goddamned incredible.
It's amazing. And it hasn't been updated in 4 years. I'm starting to worry that it won't be compatible with my computer in a few years or something. It's really good. You can have effectively the cross-section of the Enterprise D and see all of he points out all of the different rooms and things. Stellar cartography.
We should point out it's all schematics, but it's all in the LCAR system. So you're constantly seeing numbers and the buttons flashing and ticking away and little schematics coming up and stuff. But then it'll do a cross section of the Enterprise and then zoom in on a section and then starts highlighting which each of the rooms are. Like, oh, that's transporter room 3. Got it.
It's amazing. And even stuff like where the captain's yacht is, where robotics is, where, like I said, stellar cartography, the shuttlecraft, you can see them moving around in the shuttlecraft bay. The only thing, you can see the turbo lifts moving through, and
you can see the power. Like you can see the warp core is generating this. It's going up to the nacelle. This is going through the nacelles. Those are pushing out. It's really incredible.
Father Malone tipped me off to this week, and of course I had to go and find it and put it on my computer too. And I made the comment to him that this is probably better quality than they had on set for those computer graphics on the Enterprise. And I stand by that. This is, I guess, whoever developed this has the luxury of nerding out and doing this and making it granular in a way that you wouldn't have to for a movie. But it's fantastic. And it's got the ambient sound. It sounds like you're on the Enterprise. It's geek heaven. It really is.
Speaking of geek heaven, Geordi's got eyes. And I couldn't be happier. I loved the visor. I thought the visor was totally appropriate for new Star Trek when it came out. And now that we've actually made the jump to cinemas, officially, because Generations was just a warm-up, I loved it. And I love seeing them working, and we get some of his visions.
It's wonderful because look, LeVar Burton is a great actor, and to now have him not have that visor, which I loved it too, and it was very much appropriate for, like you said, for that show at that time. It allows him to express himself and be emotive in a way that he couldn't before. And he's really a delight in this because he is on Earth trying to help Cochrane get this ship off the ground with Riker. And he's the only one who doesn't really have any sort of comedic bits, or his whole thing is what do we have to do to get this ship going? And he pokes in every once in a while, but LeVar Burton he just seems like such a lovely person. And he plays the character as such. I guess he can't help doing that because he just is such a nice guy. He's someone that you'd want to go up to him and give him a hug. He just seemed, with Reading Rainbow, we've all kind of grown up with him a little bit. LeVar Burton is fantastic, and he's so good in this. He's effortless.
And he's part of my favorite moment in the entire movie, which is during Zephram Cochrane's first flight. He says, "Engage!" And Riker and LaForge share that look. And that look says everything you need to know. And I don't know. It's just, it made me smile so much.
There's little moments like that. And I also like, so they have no choice but to disclose to Cochrane who they are and why they're there. And while Riker's trying to convince him that you have to go on this flight and this is going to happen, Geordi is using Cochrane's telescope to show him the Enterprise that's currently orbiting the Earth. There's just something so funny about that because Cochrane looks into it and he's, what is this? Is there some kind of trick? Geordi says, "It's your telescope, man." And that's another point for the effects. It's a subtle thing, but they show you what Cochrane's seeing in the telescope, and you see the Enterprise. And God damn it, it looks exactly like I would expect the Enterprise to look if I saw it in the night sky. There's like heat ripples. It looks, we all can make out what it is because we know what the Enterprise is. But to Cochrane, it's a spaceship in the sky. It's a wonderful moment.
Yeah, all the stuff with Cochrane. They got James Cromwell, who just got nominated for an Academy Award for Babe. The world finally woke up to what a fucking great actor he was. But he had already been on a couple of Next Generation episodes, so he was already family, basically, with Star Trek. Thank God they got him. I can't imagine anyone else as Zephram Cochrane now, even though we met Zephram Cochrane back in the original series.
And Cromwell really was having a moment because between Babe and this, and then he went on to do L.A. Confidential, which to me might be his definitive role. I think he is so good, and he's so good in everything anyway, but L.A. Confidential really took him to another level. But I adore him in this. He's funny. You relate to him because through the whole bit of them trying to get him ready for his flight, everybody is telling him about how important a person he is and how there's schools named after him and there's a giant statue in his honor. And he's look, I didn't do any of this to be a great person. I wanted to make money so I could go to some island and ogle naked women. This guy that you're talking about, this visionary, I never met him. And because it's James Cromwell, you believe that he's agonized by all this adulation.
Do you think it's possible that had he not made the flight, that Riker and LaForge would have just gone and done it anyway? And could they have done that? And would that have been a fun thing to have done in this Star Trek First Contact movie?
They could have, but the problem there is then you're rewriting history because then it's not Zephram Cochrane doing that. Now it's these two figures that all of Earth history would have been changed. It would have been probably similar because it's still the Vulcans coming down for First Contact, but they wanted to leave the Earth as it should be in the proper timeline, and that wouldn't have been achieved in that case.
Oh, I'm saying that they did the right thing. I'm just saying that it was a potentiality there, that they would have to go do it in his stead, and then when the Vulcans arrived, they go, this was the guy who had the ship.
It was him.
It was that guy. What else? I don't know. Star Trek
So we
First
talked about Dwight
Contact.
Schultz, Lieutenant Barclay. That was, even in the theater as I'm watching it, I was so delighted because he doesn't get introduced in a very showy way. It's Cochrane who's still dealing with all this stuff in his head, and Barclay is going through hero worship, and he just keeps trying to go up to Zephram and shake his hand, but he keeps getting shooed away by Cochrane. It's subtle, and they do a great job of throwing in little bits of what I would calling it fan service. I think it's a very dismissive term.
Yeah.
But that's what we're getting here. because we get, like you said, we get Robert Picardo as the auto doctor, whatever, the hologram doctor. We get
someone in the audience, in my audience, went, "Yeah!" when the doctor showed up. I went, "Jesus Christ!" We got some Voyager fans.
I had a lot of laughter because people were like, "Oh, okay," because it was a popular show at the time. But there's little bits and pieces. The holodeck is a huge piece of fan service because there were entire episodes of Next Generation devoted to the holodeck. In particular, Dixon Hill and Picard's obsession with this hard-boiled detective. So I love that, but they also don't call undue attention to them. If you know it, great. But if you don't know what the holodeck is, you immediately understand what it's all about because you know that they go in there, he's programming some kind of story, they're dressed in costumes, it becomes like a 40s hard detective story. I guess that's how you do quote unquote fan service right, I think.
Oh yeah, it is, let's call them Easter eggs here, because what you're saying is true. But when people say fan service, it's just, and then this character walks on unmotivated and then we never see him again just so people get an applause break or something. Whereas this is all stuff that fans on the show will recognize immediately and appreciate, but if you never watched the series, it wouldn't make a difference. And I think this movie is one of the most accessible of the Star Trek films. Like that opening shot I talked about, yeah, it's breathtaking and it's great science fiction and it's beautiful special effects, but it tells you what you need to know about Jean-Luc Picard. He was part of this fucking collective and it's a problem now for him. That's all.
Yep. No, I'm with you. Look, we said at the top that this obviously is in the pantheon of the best Star Trek movies, but in the course of our conversation here, Father Malone, I'm going to say this might, I don't know, maybe it's tied for me, Star Trek II and First Contact. But First Contact, in a lot of ways, look, we had to have Star Trek II. It's an important film in the whole franchise. But they got it so right with First Contact. I think it's the most, maybe you said this at the beginning, I think you did. It's the most fun of all of the Star Trek movies. I totally agree with you there. And maybe that's why it is battling to be my favorite over time.
I think it plows through every potential genre that Star Trek has alighted on over the years. I think it's the most democratic when it comes to everyone getting their due as far as characters. Really, honestly, in this one more than others. Picard is the lead here, but everyone gets a plot. And unlike you, I think this is one of Star Trek's best villains. And I think and this is not just a character thing, but I've been complaining about the use of data throughout the entire series, which is just this, I just want to understand humans, and I want to be a human, and I want to be Pinocchio's little boy. This time, where they've grafted human skin onto his body so that he can feel that as a sensation, and they're using his emotional chip against him, I thought that was all fucking great, man. Like, they take data and effectively just strap him to a table for a good portion of this movie, and it's, I thought, riveting. All the stuff between them, the back and forth between the Borg Queen and Data. And I think this is Brent Spiner's best performance too, by the way. Maybe that's owing to Jonathan Frakes or to the writing, or I don't know, it just all coalesced for me with that guy in this movie.
I will agree with you there completely that I think this is Brent Spiner's best performance as Data in a movie. He's funny without going over the top. You don't have any silly sequences like him singing Gilbert and Sullivan or just being, I'm just Pinocchio. I want to understand what it is to be human. That whole notion of him wanting to be human is, like you said, it's weaponized against him. And there's this great moment at the end where, like you said, they've been grafting skin on his body. And by the time the movie concludes, they've put this swatch on his face. So you see it's 1/4 Brent Spiner and 3/4 Data. It's a neat effect. I like that.
I think it's chilling.
Yeah. It is, because at that moment, as the movie's ending, Picard he's now in the clutches of the Borg Queen, and you believe that Data has been converted over to the Borg's side because of what they're doing to the skin and all this business.
Flesh will make you do crazy shit.
It feels like a heel turn, but then there's this yes moment where it's Data. He's just been playing possum until the right opportunity, and then he makes it possible for them to save the Enterprise effectively. It's great. Brent Spiner's, When he's firing on all cylinders, he's fantastic. He is a great character. And it's easy to forget that amidst all of the Pinocchio's type of stuff in the original, in that series, the original TV series, he had some great moments. Remember Lore? They were going to bring, actually at some point, they were going to make a movie with Lore. They're going to have Lore in Insurrection, the next movie we're going to talk about. But I like Brent Spiner.
And they should have. And they should have.
We'll get there.
All right. I think that's going to wrap it up here on the First Contact situation. HP, next time we're going to be talking about Star Trek Insurrection, because we're going to have to.
In our way.
I don't feel good. HP, until next time, where can people find you if they're looking for you here and there and everywhere?
All right. If you're looking for me, you can find me. I co-host the Night Mr. Walters, the Taxi podcast, alongside my erstwhile co-host, Father Malone here. I also host the Noise Junkies Music Podcast, and I have a Bandcamp site, hpmusicplace.bandcamp.com.
As for me, you're listening to the show, Midnight Viewing. It's on twice a week. We've changed things around a little bit, in case you hadn't noticed. All the fests and the horror anthology television shows are on Mondays now, or Sundays or Mondays. And Father Malone's Weekly Roundup is now Thursdays or Fridays, one or the other. Check us out there. Go to the Patreon channel, please. Patreon.com/Father Malone. And subscribe. You'll get all these episodes early. You'll get them commercial free. Actually, I take that back. I don't put commercials on my show other than at the beginning and the end. Strike that. But go to patreon.com, go to all the links, go to the show notes. And, oh, by the way, I want to reiterate, go to email me and let me know that I'm right about the Borg Queen and that more importantly, that HP is wrong. Until next time, everybody, I don't know, resistance is futile or something, or
live long and prosper.
Exterminate!